a real spontaneous moment happened. A woman was asking some questions of me to see what I could find, and I was looking at that, and there was this moment of kind of moving into another level. And as a channeler, you're going to know what I mean by that. But it was the first time that information came in so rapidly that I was really surprised, and so was she. I couldn't get the information out fast enough, and it was all about her well-being, her health.
Hello, my loves. This is Johanna Burkhardt. I am a multidimensional channel, teacher, healer, and author. And I am obsessed with all things metaphysical, esoteric, galactic, and of course, the healing journey. And I'm here to share my stories, my wisdom, and my teachings about being human in the illusion that we call reality. Welcome to Cosmic Blonde. Hello, my loves. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Linda Eastburn, and she is an entrepreneur, author, real estate investor, and intuitive. She is the author of 4 books, the latest being S.P.I, S.P.I, Your Way to Power and Success, about living life intuitively. She has lectured at universities across the country. She has combined a world of business with the spiritual world of intuition to teach others an easier way. Her personal development program, S.P.I, teaches others to see beyond the narrow band of perception and become more aware of multiple opportunities that are available to them. Thank you so much for joining us today, Linda.
Thank you for having me, Joanna. I'm happy to be here.
It is such a gift to have someone on the show that is blending 2 worlds, because I think that that is something that is needed as more and more people become aware of themselves and awaken. So could you give us a little backstory on how this transition happened for you?
Well, it was probably always with me, the intuitive portion of my life. It had always been there. I probably didn't give it as much respect as I should have, or acknowledged it very much. Oftentimes I was dreaming something, and that might come true in the next few days or something like that. Just kind of knowing things in advance, seeing those things come about, but not giving them a great deal of regard. Nor was I able to do that on command. They were just natural occurrences happening in my life. So as I progressed, became an adult, got out of school, and progressed on into the field of real estate, I really began to notice a strong correlation between my gut feelings, my emotions, my intuition, if you want to call it that, and the properties that we were beginning to invest in. We were primarily investors. We worked with a lot of other investors, but we had a brokerage as well. But I could tell, I could get a sense of what a property might sell for, or kind of whether to stay away from that property or move toward it. And it was a really guiding kind of a force in my life, and it proved to be, extremely profitable in that regard. But it wasn't until I was around 40 that I began to really take this intuition seriously. And I began a class which helped with meditation, learning focus, concentration, all of that sort of thing. And I also went into the field of hypnosis. I became a hypnotherapist, started working with that as a skill factor, to be able to get into those deeper levels of mind. And upon doing that, I began to notice that, and it wasn't right away. I mean, this took some time and some effort, but there were a lot of exercises I was doing. But I began to notice that I could ask a question during meditation or before meditation, and an answer might come back. And being super aware of my physical system, which is where intuition really comes from, your body will speak to you, I began to understand that when I had a serious question, I really wanted an answer. There was an emotional motivation there to access further information. But information was beginning to come back, and I opened a dialogue, basically. I would get a sense or a feel about something. I would ask a question, and I would get a sense or a knowing in my body about what direction to go with that. But I kind of took that to an extreme level, doing that every day. And with doing that every day, of course, it developed more. And it was later on that I read a book called The Talent Code. And it really wasn't about intuition at all. It was more about how we develop these super skills. It was about athletes, musicians, people who practice devotedly a certain skill. And it talked about building these neurons and the myelin coating around the neurons in our brain when we do something over and over again and do it correctly each time. And that was what I was doing, but I didn't know that's what I was doing. So I
Yeah.
began to understand that I could ask a question about myself or someone else or a place or location or about business or about personal life, anything that I wanted to. And there was this immediate response to my questions. And I began to correlate how accurate they were, if I could trust those, because I'm a very business oriented person. I'm very much to want the truth of the matter, not just assume things. So
Right.
I was really taking this through a lot of loops to find out how much I could trust it. And eventually I began to understand I had around a 75 to 80% accuracy rate with it. When it was wrong, it was wrong. When it was right, it was really right. And it was usually more right than wrong.
Right.
So I began a course in teaching other people how to become more aware of their gut feelings. We sort of in the Western culture, this is viewed as something that's kind of superstitious or something kind of on should be put on a shelf and let go. Doesn't even exist. There's no proof for it. Actually, there's a lot of evidence that our body has this ability to know things, but most people just don't acknowledge it very much. But eventually, this was strong enough, and teaching it was strong enough, and I began to see how it enabled other people to have more productive lives, whether it be in business or just their personal life or whatever. So I continued on with real estate, of course, naturally. That's my bread and butter. That was a very lucrative, successful thing for me, and I continued on doing that, and still do to this day. But I also created a platform whereby I could speak on the subject of intuition, lecture. I've been invited to many universities and spiritual centers and lots of retreats, and helping people understand there's another side of you that you may not be allowing to be part of this picture, and
Yeah.
it's a bigger picture with a lot more information that is available to you. So that's how I got started.
Yeah. And I love that you said, some of the things you said because um, as someone who channels spirit, people don't often understand, well, how do you do that? Or what does that look like? And it really is no different than an athlete getting into the zone, right? We call it the zone or the flow state. Or anytime you're in kind of you're working or writing or artists who are writing songs, it's the same thing. They're concentrating, they're accessing that flow state and that information just comes through so naturally. And it's so true that you can use it in everyday life and of course in creating business for yourself. So I think that it's such an important thing that you're doing to help people get in touch with, because it isn't just about the woo woo, as I like to call it. There's so many other applications, and even just your everyday life being in tune with what's right for you and what's not right for you. What kind of people come to you? Like, what is your main demographic?
In the beginning, when I was doing just simple things, it was just all kinds of people, but no real professional individuals. It wasn't until I began using this more specifically with a body mind type of relationship that I began to have a lot of doctors, nurses, alternative health practitioners, massage therapists. That's what took me into more the medical institutions and the universities to talk about how powerful our body really is in this mind body relationship. This was something that sort of happened to me spontaneously as I was making my transition from strictly a business person doing real estate into an individual who was also, wanting to see how much information I could help people with, how much I could connect with others. And a real spontaneous moment happened. A woman was asking some questions of me to see what I could find, and I was looking at that, and there was this moment of kind of moving into another level. And as a channeler, you're going to know what I mean by that. But it was the first time that information came in so rapidly that I was really surprised, and so was she. I couldn't get the information out fast enough, and it was all about her well being, her health, what she needed to do to take care of herself. And honestly, this woman, she was in her 40s. She looked, totally healthy and fine. I had no idea that she had a health issue. It was the first time I'd ever met her. But we were just moving into this space, and she asked a simple question: "Can you get in touch with my guardian angels?" And I thought, that wasn't in my criteria that I knew how to do. The only thing I knew how to do was ask a question and get an answer. So that's what I did. I just tried to connect with her guardian angels. And I really felt like that her guardian angels delivered that message to her. But for me personally, what happened was my heart chakra really opened. And I became so gifted with this deep sense of compassion and love in that moment that it was so easy to make that connection of the best and highest good for her. And I think her guardian angels were likely present, but my heart space was open as well to be able to deliver that message. Later, I began to understand that that was most likely a gamma brainwave state that I moved into, which is a very rapid, concentrated state that I had not achieved before. Occasionally, I do arrive at that same state again, or now, and occasionally I have students that arrive at that particular state. And it was sort of the title of my first book, called Writing the Intuitive Wave, was about getting into that state of mind and being so concentrated and being that one that can deliver a message that has the highest and best for someone else. So that was just a spontaneous moment for me.
Have you, because when I channel, I'm in gamma, but you can also receive in theta. Have you developed a way for you to access gamma more regularly now?
It depends on all of the circumstance that's available. It depends on how priority the question is to the individual, first of all, because you have to have the energy field there that's attentive and knowing, wanting an answer. And then, of course, I try now always to just go into my heart chakra with compassion for that person, get me out of the way. And
Yes, that's important.
get my opinions out of the way as well, so I can just allow clear, precise message to come through. But it depends on all the circumstance I find, and how important or relevant it is to the person. I know I did a session for a woman a short time ago, and she really wasn't willing to make any concession to her situation. And so it was difficult to really deliver. I mean, the message was accurate, I feel like, but with her lack of cooperation with the information, she believed it was true. She just simply was never going to do what was coming through. And it was the only means that I saw for her to return to a state of normal with both her children, and it was a custody battle. So it was something that was very trying for her to deal with the words I was saying. And it probably wasn't a gamma brainwave state, but it was very solid information that came back through. But those are always challenging, because sometimes we want the answers to be something different than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that type of energy will interfere in the middle of the session because it doesn't want to be heard. And I can sometimes tell when that happens, and will often say, in the middle of a session, I realize that this is something that you don't agree with. But I can't change what comes in. It's just, no matter how hard I try, it's not going to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to tell people, like, don't have an expectation, and whatever comes through, just hold on to it, set it down. Because oftentimes, even with just mediumship, I remember before I did this professionally, I had a mediumship reading and they told me something, and I was so stuck on what I wanted to hear that I missed so much. And two, some of the information that came through, I was like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. And 6 months later, it sure enough was true, because I found the evidence of it. But we get so attached to what we want. And not only that, but like you were mentioning, if you're closed off, or you kind of leery about this kind of work, it makes it difficult to read their records, as I like to say, read their energy. And so I always say, like, you've really try to get them into a relaxed state, but you got to come open, open to the possibilities. You got to let that in. And so it's you, like you said, you can still get information, but it's so much easier and there's so much more information if they're open and willing to participate and connect without an agenda.
Right. A lot of the sessions I did, most of them, I never met the person. And oftentimes they didn't even know when I was doing the session.
Oh,
Those were
okay.
always, we had their permission and a desire to have the session, but often they didn't even participate. So it was just a recorded session that was sent to them and they were allowed to listen to it then.
Oh,
So by doing that, it's like some people are aware enough that they know when you're doing the session, but most people aren't.
yeah.
So that way I found that I could do a session without having any interference whatsoever
Yeah.
in that process. I could just look at that very, very straightforward. Some people it's more difficult to connect with. I agree with what you were saying. It's just more difficult to connect. Either our frequencies are just on such different planes or something.
Hmm.
But other people, it's just like everything that you asked just is just present. I know there was a woman, because my specialty is sometimes seeing the future and those opportunities in the future, as you read about the book that I just wrote. There was a woman who, she was 40, she'd never been married, and she was looking at potential relationship in her future. She didn't want to spend the rest of her life, single or alone. She was, like I said, a teacher, so she asked about any future prospect of someone in her world. She lived, I think, in Colorado, and I saw the school where she taught. I could see a gentleman that was, and I think the words I used, there was someone that you come in contact with or near contact with frequently, but you've never met. And then I also saw his profession. I saw his stature and what he looked like. I don't think I got a name for that, but I saw him living exactly 10 miles due south of her home. And I
Oh,
saw
wow.
his house. I saw trees around his house. And she lived in kind of a desert area of Colorado. So it was unlikely there would be a grove of trees, but the subdivision where he lived, I could see there was a grove of trees around his house. And they were extremely compatible. That was one thing that I saw. They were extremely compatible. So soon thereafter, she took a dance class. And of course, she didn't have a partner. There were just a lot of people in the class. And so there was a gentleman she met that fit the criteria. He was in computers, and that was something I saw. And his stature was, similar to what I saw. And his sister, come to find out, lived right across the street from the school where she taught, and he went there every Wednesday for dinner. So he was in close proximity to her school, as I had seen in the beginning. And when they finally started dating, and she went to his home eventually, and it was exactly 10 miles due south of her house in a grove of trees. So sometimes it can be so easy, to
Yeah.
just see those potentials setting out there. So my expertise was really helping people to see that potential that
Yeah.
is always available, because I personally have had that so many times where I could see those things in my life and my future, and then be able to manifest those into a reality in my life. So
Yeah.
helping people to do that was something that I eventually began to do.
I love that you use the word potential because that's what I use as well. Because I always tell people there is so many different timelines and realities. So I always say it's the greatest potential available at this moment. But there are things that you have to do to align to that potential. And so I love that you use that word because not a lot of intuitives use that word. They like, this is what's going to happen. And it's like, well, yes, that's a potential of what could happen. It doesn't guarantee it.
The future has many random possibilities.
Yeah.
And what I like to say is, and this is something that just happened to me early on. And so this has kind of taught me how to view it this way. But I was on a drive about 5 hours from my house, and it was winter. It was kind of late in the day when we got started going to this location, and it was started raining. And I was really nervous about ice forming on the roads because the temperature was starting to drop.
Yeah.
So I asked intuitively about that, and I got a clear message back that said it will be completely dry roads at a certain location. That was about 2 hours down the road. And sure enough, when we got to that location, the road was completely dry, and it was dry the rest of the journey. So then that brought up, of course, a lot more questions because I was pretty new at this at that time, especially. And I said, well, okay, so I was learning kind of a creatorship manifesting in my life, as well as being able to be intuitive and see things. So I asked the question, okay, did I just intuitively see that or did I create that? And the information that came back was both. And it's like, oh,
Yes.
wow, now I have a whole lot more to investigate. So that took me on a journey of understanding how, as we see things in the future, we are establishing a kind of parameter around that event to be able to bring it into our life. Now, it's not set in stone because at that point, I think it's just more about like a hologram. It's
Hmm.
not a solid reality in our life, but the Spy Your Way to Power and Success is really about understanding how to first intuitively perceive things, but second is how to hold on to that intuitive kind of a charged circle of energy around that so we can fully bring it into the reality of our life.
Yes. Well, because believing is seeing.
Mhm.
So the more you believe in that, then the more that the universe, as I like to say, will conspire to create that with you, because we are these powerful co-creators. So tell
That's
us,
true. Yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, that's true. In the SPI technique, I really had to back engineer so many things. I have been so fortunate in so many ways in my life, both with the real estate investing, but also with the intuitive work that I did. I met all the right people, the right timing, it was invited to all the right events. And most of that was just seen in the future and able to do that. So when I wrote the book, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, I wanted to back engineer my life experience. And with that came a lot of insight that I had not previously had. And one of those was, how we create charged energy fields to be able to bring that fully into a manifested state in our life. And I had a physicist that I worked with, and he also helped me to understand a lot of the probably physics behind a lot of
Right.
what we do and to be able to create that charged energy field, just really being able to utilize more of the physical system, because I think our body is a creative energy field in and of itself. And you know that you probably do that all the time. But in the SPI technique where I teach people to do that, I also teach them how to build those charged energy fields around those things and in using the chakra system of the body and be able to create spin and to be able to create that energy field that will then enable that to go from a hologram right straight through to a reality of your life. So many times, we see something and we believe it maybe is going to happen, but we aren't often able to maintain the consistency of that. It
Yes.
fluctuates back and forth. And in that holographic state, things are very, very vulnerable to just dissipate. So as we see it, it may be absolutely 100% that you can manifest this, but you have to also work that all the way through the energy field to bring it into your life.
Yeah, to make it solid. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
why people can manifest things and then lose them very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I always say it's about it being solid inside of you, you know? And that's why I like to live a little delusionally for that
Yeah.
reason, because, people be like, why are you saying that or doing that? And it's because this is my reality, even if I can't see it. And the more I live that way, the more solid it becomes, right? So
Right.
I'm curious if there's any tips or techniques, just small pieces that you can share. I know that you have all this in your book, but is there something that you can give the audience that they could run with that would intrigue them to even want to go further into the book, as far as the technique
Absolutely.
wise?
Yeah, there's so many simple things that you can do. One of the best states that you can utilize is your dream state at night. And I would practice and still do, just write a question down before going to sleep. It needs to be a relevant part of your life or advice, to come in. And then just record your dream that when you wake up. At first, it may not feel like it's giving you any kind of a message, but as you begin doing this, journaling this day in, day out, you'll find that these messages get clearer to you. You'll be able to understand what this is trying to tell you, perhaps. And also, it takes a period of time before your subconscious mind is going to understand what you're asking it to do. So you have
Yeah.
to give it a chance. But that's one thing I would highly recommend. The other is start meditation. And there again, the type of meditation I did was just to ask a question and listen for an answer. Now, it took a long time before I could actually even get an answer back. I would sit
Right.
there in my 20-minute meditation with nothing returning to me. But I was devoted. The meditation was good, whether I got an answer back or not. And eventually an answer started coming through. And then that was the moment that I began to realize that, oh, I'm not stuck with just one answer. I can create another question and get another answer back because I'm connected now once this message is coming
Yes.
through. And so that's another thing I would highly recommend. Give it time, give it space. Listening also to your body. If you get a sense or a feel that something isn't quite right for you, start listening, start acknowledging that. As you begin to acknowledge it, it will begin to speak to you more readily. And
Yes.
eventually, I can take kind of decode these messages into an actual verbiage. And that was, what I did, but it took a long time to do that. But everyone has this. I mean, it's not
Yes.
foreign to us. Just remember that your body is receiving so many messages every single day, and our conscious mind can only deal with so much. So you're
Yeah.
going to miss 90% of those messages. But if you give yourself a little space to just listen to your body, listen to those messages coming in, it will begin to communicate more readily.
Yeah. I always say follow that intuition, what your body's telling you, and unpack it later because there's not going to be a story around it. There's not, it's not something that's going to make logical sense all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit doesn't speak that way. Your intuition speaks in incomplete sentences. It's a little breadcrumb trail. So just trust it, unpack it later. And it may reveal itself. Most of the time it does, but it doesn't always, you know? Um, Gosh, I was going to ask you something. And I think oh, do you, when you are working with people, do you help them understand how their intuition speaks to them? Because it doesn't speak the same to everyone. So do you have a process that you do when you're working with someone to help them understand how their intuition speaks to them?
A lot of what I teach people with is, follow what works for you. And,
Yeah,
it may be an auditory. I'm very auditory. So it comes
me
back to the
too.
auditory. For a lot of people, it's an image. It's going to be a picture. And the pictures can sometimes be like a puzzle that you're trying to put together. So we work with whatever your strength is. Some people will be stronger in a dream state. Some people meditation. Some people, it's going to be just synchronicities that happen in, physical synchronicities that happen in their life. Now, for me, that happens often as well.
Me too.
Usually it's around something is going to manifest very rapidly. And so synchronicities will start happening. Another thing I began to notice is oftentimes when someone is going to pass, I will have an opportunity to say goodbye to them just by chance. Someone I may not have seen for 10 years or even thought of for 10 years. I may meet
Yeah.
up with them in a store or something like that. And shortly thereafter, either they will or a loved one of theirs will. So it's like these synchronicities are intuitive moments as well. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be one thing. And
Right.
it's not that rigid, all of
No.
life, if we allow it to. Even animals. I remember when my mom passed in 2017, we knew it wasn't far away, but I remember I wasn't sleeping particularly well because I was a caretaker and oversaw all of my parents' caretaking as they were elderly. She was 94. She lived a good long life, but I woke up one morning and I could hear an owl outside my bedroom.
I
And
love
I got
owls.
up and the owl just kept, and I'd never heard it before, and I just really had a strong sense that this was a type of message, that was trying to get my attention. Now, if the owl was there before, it may not have gotten my attention because I wasn't in a state to actually hear it.
Right.
But this time I was, and that was a 2-week process. And then she died in about 2 weeks. But this is the really strange thing that happened is that one of the caretakers there was really sweet. She was putting together kind of a memory book of my mom, and she would, it was a way to pass the day. She would ask my mom, what's your favorite tree? What's your favorite fruit? And at one point she said, what's your favorite bird? And I didn't know this. I mean, I know my mom for 94 years, 94 years she was living. But her favorite bird was an owl. And then when we went through all of her belongings, after she passed, I found these little owl figurines all over the house that I didn't really know, but I thought it was very synchronistic that it was an owl that I heard outside my bedroom window and early in the mornings for the 2 weeks prior to her death.
I mean, even you just bringing up the an owl is is a symbol for me because an owl is my main spirit animal. So when I go places and I see owls all over, or I go into someone's house and they have owls everywhere, I always know I'm right where I'm supposed to be, you
Right.
know? And so you just have to, I call it building your dictionary. You got to build your dictionary of what things mean for you and just trust when you see something or you hear something you sometimes we get a feeling and we don't really know what it means, but it's like what were you thinking about? What's the first thing that pops in or the first person's name, that type of thing. But synchronicity is so much more than numbers on a clock or, the numbers. I for the last, I don't know, month or so, I've had this intuitive nudge to start going into women's shelters and donating my time and speaking. And I I was interviewed on someone's podcast and she went through the whole podcast and we got off and she said she was opening up a women's shelter for trafficked women in the United States and wanted to hire me. And I thought I had chills and I was like, well, there you go. There's the synchronicity showing up that that's the path to follow. And so again, when I first got that nudge, like sometimes it doesn't make sense in the moment, but write it down or take a mental note of it because it will continue to show up in different ways. And you just, again, the breadcrumb trail. You want to follow the breadcrumb trail because that's what it really is.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
100% agree. And it's sometimes doesn't make sense. Sometimes logic will get in the way of
Yeah.
that. But if you just allow yourself to just go with the flow of what
Get
that is, it's like
curious.
you don't know where it's going to lead and where it's going to end. But yeah, 100% agree.
Just be curious.
Mhm.
Was there anything more you want to talk about within SPI or any of your other books that we should know about?
Well, I've written four books. Three of them are on the intuitive work, and the other one is on kind of encounters with kind of paranormal things, because a lot of people
Oh,
that I have worked with, and I have a YouTube channel that works with interviewing people that have had unusual experiences. So I do have that. That's something rather separate from this, but it really
yes.
does have some overlay in many, many ways. That has taught me a lot about podcasting and about the work that I do. And I see so many times that the reality that, like you said, you live in a delusional world, but the reality that is in front of us is really one that we put there.
Yeah.
You know? So pay attention to what you're putting in your reality. Pay attention to what's going on in your world, and pay attention to how you're responding to it. And if it seems good for you and productive for you, or causes you to be distracted in some way. Because the life you want is up to you. It's
Yeah.
entirely your choice what type of life that you have. So many times also we get so programmed into believing that we can't have the things we want. And what I like to say is not, I can't have that, but how do I have that? How
Yeah.
can I have that? Show me a way that that can be in my life. And if you do that on a daily basis, life just begins to open up for you instead of
Yeah.
closing down. So that's one thing that I definitely, that's through all of my books, I think, is just, opening up a path or a way. Be willing to step out of comfort zones. That is really important. Be willing to trust that if you don't get it right the first time, you can get it right the third time or the fourth time. And it's an experimental thing if you haven't done it before. So just put yourself out there, take that risk, do it cautiously, because you can also jump off a cliff. You don't want to get that
Yeah.
deep. And I've had a few people do that, get a little bit far, into this, but and it's a transition. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of approaching life. It isn't as difficult as we think or we believe that it has to be or can be. It can be just absolutely guided and be in the flow of things. And it can be so much easier than we make it be.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just about being curious. Like we've been programmed to like need certainty and need answers and need blueprints. Like give me every single step. And it doesn't work that way. They give you a step at a time, sometimes a little more than just one at a time. But you just have to be open and curious, and the answers will show up. What I like to say is they will continually provide you, with the answers until you either see it or you no longer need it. So don't feel like you ask once and if you don't get it, that's not it. You may walk into the grocery store and hear something that someone else is saying, And that one thing, it hits you and everything goes, clicks into place. So be open to, even if they sit and meditate or do the dream question, be open to your environment because the answer is always going to be trying to come into you. You just have to be open to receive it.
Absolutely. It can be from anywhere. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't have to be that locked down kind of thing that you think it is, because life is always interacting with us. And
Yeah.
there's always a message trying to come through. Now, some people might view that as being a little superstitious, but I don't. I mean, I view it as being
Either.
just an open dialogue with the existence of my reality. And if I'm looking for something, if I'm seeking the highest and best for myself or for someone else as well, then it's going to find a way to get that message through somehow.
Yeah. I'm curious when you mentioned that you've gone to like medical institutions or doctors and talked about this or shared your expertise. How do you see this entering into the medical field, or do you? Because it kind of gives me hope as someone who has not had great experience with Western medicine and doctors only using their book knowledge and really not listening to their intuition. Have you noticed if they're receptive to this or what kind of questions they've had?
Yeah, it's first of all, I have a lot of friends that are physicians. So those are the doors that have opened for me and being able to be invited to a lot of these medical institutions and universities as well, to be able to speak about the mind-body relationship. And most of the physicians that I know personally are already invested in this type of knowledge that the body is not just a mechanical
Yeah.
substance, but rather, we're a whole spiritual being as well as a physical being, so that there is a correlation. I've had a lot of them take my classes after lecturing. So I think many of them are very open to this, especially the nursing field. I've had hospitals and medical institutions actually pay for my course to be taught to their physicians and their
That's
nurses. Now that's
amazing.
amazing, but it happened. It has, at this point, it seems like moved into a field that they are trying to monopolize, which I understand that's usually the case, where you have the layperson like me who has no medical background, but now it's moving into medical institutions where they can actually teach their own methods of the mind-body relationship to nurses and such, not more than physicians. I don't think that's actually made it to a medical standard yet, but
Yeah.
with for physicians, but for nurses, yes. Now I can say that there was a time I put together something I call the precision mind, which was really just my own background of focus, concentration, meditation. And I did that for a group of medical students. They were going through rigorous medical testing. And what we found was if they can get into the zone there again, to be able to take that test where they're taking it more intuitively, where the memory of what they've studied comes through more easily. But it was more than that. It was developing deep concentration and deep methods of going when they did study and taking care of their body, understanding the body mind relationship, even in test taking and being ready for that test. It's food, rest, exercise, all of those things that play into who we are as a total human being and going in and being able to test. Well, the original group that I worked with, they were very, very devoted to doing this, and it was an experimental type of thing, but they got the highest scores across the country. So eventually this precision mind became a protocol that they adopted into test taking. If many institutions adopted this into the test taking model because it worked so well. And the students, they benefited so greatly by just learning that different types of food that you eat and rest and exercise, concentration exercises, and then learning how to get into that zone inside of yourself to be able to take the test effectively from your subconscious mind rather than having to just drag out tons of information from your conscious mind, which can sometimes wear you out.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that something now is that like something, because the precision thing that you were talking about, that's something you created, yes?
I created that along with this medical institution, to be able to use it. Now they took that and ran with it. I still create the precision. I still teach the precision mind method
Okay.
of being able to utilize your mind, but I don't teach that directly to the medical students. They do that on their own.
But that is so cool that you were able to do that because that is so true because I always say our brain is just a receiver. It's not storing a whole lot of information. Your field is. So when you can get into that space and just retrieve that information, receive from that moment that you were studying, that's just genius that you were able to do that. I think that that should be something that's taught in a lot of places, not just, in the medical industry. But it gives me hope though, because I know Reiki has come into hospitals more. Some of the major big hospitals now offer Reiki. I mean, there was a time when acupuncture was taboo. So we're making progress. But I love that you do and have seen doctors and nurses, wanting to utilize that because it can save a life. Because some things are just not recorded, or they just, there's things that they may not know to test for. And so I think that that is such a beautiful gift that you've been able to share with them.
Well, I think the precision mind really came from my own personal development,
Yeah,
the skills that I developed to be able to access that information, that dialogue that I opened up and be able to get all that information. I recognized that was something that wasn't just my spirit was, in part of that. It was all of the concentration exercise and being able to focus my mind to be able to hear that message that was coming through.
yeah,
That required a single thought or attention upon the answer that was coming through. Because our mind generally, we think 40 things a minute and or more, and it gets in the way. And so
yeah.
I learned how to quiet my mind, have great concentration skill, be able to focus intently, to be able to know when I was receiving a message and when I was just thinking up something. And
Right.
so that was another part of the precision mind I was able to teach because I'd done it myself.
Do you have that teaching in a book, or is that something that you offer for people who are interested in that?
Usually those are workshops that I
Okay.
teach people. And if a group wants to bring me in, I'm always available to come teach. But it's not really in a book per se. A lot of those exercises, however, are scattered throughout my book.
Okay.
So you can pick up on a lot of it, but it's not, the precision mind isn't one protocol that I have in the book specifically. No.
Okay. Wow, that's impressive. I'm just very impressed by what your story and what you are out there doing in the world. So, why don't you share with people where they can find you and where your books are so that they can learn more? I know I'm going to pick up Spy, but I love paranormal. I love those weird experiences. What's the name of that book? Because I'm definitely getting that book.
It's called Threshold to Encounters, and it's
Okay.
all of my years of understanding the paranormal. I was a UFO researcher for a long time. I did hypnosis with
Really?
people who had abduction experiences because I had that skill of hypnosis. And then with my channel of cryptids, it took me into another world of some very unusual experiences that people had. So I wrote that book and started speaking at conferences about that as well. But that's called Threshold to Encounters. And you can find all my books on Amazon.com. Just put in Linda Eastburn, just like it sounds, and you can find my books there. You can find me on my website, which is lindaeastburn.com. And you can also find me on things like Facebook. I have a lot of groups on Facebook, and I'm always open to talk with people. You can also just email me at lindaeastburn@gmail.com because I'm always open to talking with people, and even book a session at 417-863-1377. I'm available for sessions, SPI sessions or classes, either one.
Awesome. Have you ever had a UFO encounter or experience like that?
No, my mother has, my brother-in-law has,
Oh,
and all these people have it. The only thing I had was an orange light I saw one night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I was sitting in an automobile. It was out in the country, and I was at my brother-in-law's house, and my husband was talking with his brother in the garage for a little while. So I was there for maybe 10 minutes, just sitting in the automobile waiting. It was dark, and I was looking over a gravel road. It was way out in the country, and there was a field in front of me, a pasture, cattle in it. And there was on the horizon was a tree line, and there was this orange light. At first, I thought it might be an airplane or something that we go on over. When it didn't, I didn't know what it was, but it just stayed stationary there. Excuse me. So eventually it went down. The next day, I found out that 3 cows had been mutilated in that area.
Wow. I was going to say, as soon as you said there was cows, I was like, of course there was cows. Because
Yes,
I don't know why those two things end up coming together all the time. I don't know why they're so interested in cows, but I always find that there's some type of correlation with,
excuse me.
with cattle. That's funny. Well, if there was only one thing that you could tell people in this world, what would that one thing be? What would that one message be that you think that would be so powerful for them?
Um, Always have a glass of water when you're on the
I was
podcast.
gonna say that. I was like, that you might need some water right now.
And I didn't bring one in. Honestly, it would be to trust yourself.
Yeah. Because you're always trusting in something anyway. So it might as well be what you know and you're knowing. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was such an interesting episode. And I'm going to be ordering a couple of your books, and I will be staying in touch with you because I think what you do is so important. And as I come across places that I think would benefit from your expertise, I'm definitely going to share your information because I think that this is only going to just open the world up more, and that's what we need. We need people to think more outside of the box and to really know that there's so much more to this life than what they see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, I will see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by JohannaBurkhardt.com, where it's time to defy the limits of your mind and step into your multidimensional mastery. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.